every time there's a new marketer, they want to redesign everything. And we often see conversion rates drop automatically. And then we've got to restart again. Again, I think where UX stops and CRO continues is that let's put it into market. Sometimes not enough to just redesign, go back to that customer, get feedback on that updated design, until you put it out there into market where you're actually dealing with people who actually, whether they're going to give their money, that's the actual final test. Absolutely. It's really easy to get into testing now. The tools, the research is all there. What's also great is that now we've got a level playing field where some of these incredible tools were inbuilt tools are only accessible by large companies. Now it's a field of experimentation where it's very easy to get into with a range of tools such as VWO that makes it very affordable and easy for anyone to start doing testing. Research from anywhere you can get it, right? Whether it's desktop research, whether it's research from SEO, make sure you're trying to get as much research and identifying those customer issues as much. I think if you follow that process, you're going to get a much better win rate as well. If you're starting a CRO program, don't be discouraged by the losses that you're going to get as well. And a journey through a website is exactly that. So often, we make changes through a homepage, but from the homepage to the actual checkout, are something like 20 multiple different steps across to get there. So focus on the journey, just moving customers from one stage of the journey to the next stage of the journey. Getting an understanding of numerous behavioral biases are really fascinating. The fresh start effect is another great one. When do most people have affairs? It's on the 9th. It's like when I'm about to turn 39, 29, 49 is when most people have affairs. Is that it's a fresh start.
Welcome to another episode of the CRO Wizards series by VWO Podcast. In this series, we speak to top CRO leaders in e-commerce, media, subscription, retail, banking, and other industries about CRO strategies and the positive impact they can have on your business. Before we speak to our special guest for this episode, here's a quick summary of who we are and what we do. VWO is a leading experience optimization platform. Using our latest product, VWO Insights, you can analyze user journeys and identify conversion roadblocks on your website and mobile app. So without any further delay, let's jump right into the conversation.
We're excited to have Sorab Del Rio, Experimentation Director at EssenceMediacom Australia, join us for this episode. With 20 years of experience in marketing, Sorab brings a diverse background from both agency and client-side roles. Sorab started his career with a decade in direct response marketing, working with brands like Time Life and Brad Fox Exchange, where he developed his expertise in testing. He then moved into digital marketing, spending another 10 years with companies such as P&O Cruises and Samsung, focusing on brand, CRM, and CRO. In past 3 years, Saurabh has been consulting across Republic, trained by industry experts like Nima Yasini and Deloitte, and now works at EssenceMedia.com. His experience spans various sectors, including finance, quick service, restaurants, fitness app, tourism, e-commerce, collectibles, and wine. Additionally, Saurabh is also the publisher and writer for Silver Fox Comics. Join us as Saurabh shares his insights and experiences in experimentation and CRO. Hi, Saurabh. Welcome to the CRO Wizards series by VWO Podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me on the podcast. Pleasure to be here.
Great. How are you starting off this week, and any plans or goals you're excited about this week ahead?
I am. I'm actually starting with a new client this week. Very excited, actually. I won't reveal the name of the client, but it's an iconic Australian brand. So I'm absolutely thrilled to be working on this new client. Yes, yeah. You'll probably find out more as we get further into the project, but very excited to start this week off. And then, as you mentioned, with comics, I'm off to Brisbane, which is it's another state for a comic event on the weekend. So, yeah, a good mix of CRO as well as comics. It's going to be a great week.
That's a great start.
Mm.
So, what were your initial thoughts when you received the invitation to be on this podcast?
I was like, oh, how come you didn't invite me before? Why is it taking so long? No, no, I was no, I was thrilled. I've listened to the podcast, and a lot of the people that have been on the podcast are friends of mine or acquaintances or people that I follow. So yeah, I'm thrilled to be on the podcast and get a chance to talk about my passion and love for experimentation.
We are equally thrilled to have you and hear about your insights.
Yeah, wonderful.
When did you realize your passion for experimentation and decide that this was the career for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Great start. So, I was really lucky to get into experimentation right at the very beginning of my career. So, as you mentioned, I worked in direct response marketing and in the world of print marketing, across direct mail, letterbox drops, also across telemarketing. And print marketing may seem archaic in this day and age, but if you know the history of marketing, A/B testing optimization really began in the 1920s and 30s with these great direct response marketers. So, one of my first jobs was managing a letterbox drop. And I came in and I decided to redesign the entire brochure completely. I didn't test it, I just redesigned it completely. And it went to market. It was a massive letterbox drop across Australia. And my very first campaign, I had a 20% uplift in conversion. And I was thrilled, and my manager loved it. The whole company was like, fantastic job, Sorab. And then I met with the owner of that particular letterbox drop. And he came in. His name is Tom, and he said, "Sarab, what are you doing?" And I go, "Tom, I've just had this great result." He goes, "You just got lucky, Sarab. Honestly, you just got lucky. Do you think you're going to do that every time?" He said, "You completely redesigned it with no regard for the previous work that we've been doing before. And what if this had been the reverse? What if instead of getting a 20% improvement on conversion, you got a 20% decrease in conversion? Would you know what would have caused it? Would you have any safeguards in it?" So he was absolutely furious at me at doing this, you know. And and then he said, "Don't be a common marketer where you're completely redesigning, changing things. Every time there's a new marketer, they want to redesign everything, you know. And we often see conversion rates drop automatically." And then we've got to restart again. He goes, "Look, you're playing with the company's fortunes here, not just in this channel, but if you take that mentality into every other channel that you're touching, you're going to have, it can lead to serious consequences for this business." And so I was like, "Oh, wow," I was really taken aback by this. And so he taught me about the basics of A/B testing, about, sure, let's be innovative and let's be, experimentation, but let's start looking at iterative testing and continuous improvement. But at the same time, let's also be very defensive about the way we go to market. And that's why you've got your control versus your variation. You've got a baseline that you're always guaranteed that you'll get this conversion rate. And also let's focus on changing specific variables. So if you do get an increase, you can identify exactly and pinpoint what exactly caused that improvement. You can then go into the boardroom and go, "Hey, we had an improvement. This is the reason why." As opposed to most marketers go in and really won't know what caused that particular improvement. Because he said, if you continue to redesign and throw the dice, you're going to start to lose very quickly and you won't know exactly what's done. So very much started at the outset. He became an unofficial mentor, would meet almost every quarter and start planning the new campaign, would start talking about different ideas. He'd start telling him about the other companies that he was introducing into A/B testing and some of their insights. And so I took that and I really started doing that across all of the channels that I mentioned, whether it's direct mail, whether it's telemarketing and scripts. So yeah, I was fortunate to get that experience and that mentor right from the very get-go. And that's how I got into experimentation.
That's an interesting journey. Well, like how you started and how it just, you're still continuing into this and adding more work to that.
Yeah, I mean, I love. It was really interesting moving from starting with that mentality and working across direct response companies like Time Life and the Bradford Exchange, who are known as the pioneers of A/B testing, or certainly database management. It was one of our sort of our KPIs or responsibilities was to make sure that we tested every single month. All of our monthly reports, we needed to have tests in there, and also we had to do presentations for the business, and we were always doing testing there. And What's interesting about these companies is that continuous iterative testing. So there's a product from the Bradford Exchange, the Kincaid Christmas tree. Their creative hasn't changed in about 15 years. It's just been continual micro slight improvements. One of the big things that they used to do was a lot of price testing. looking at price elasticity. And that was really fascinating and understand how far we could go. So I remember testing products at $149 versus $199. 6 months later, we'd be testing $199 versus $249. And I know they've continued to increase, but pretty much within an 18-month period, we'd taken that product from $149 to $299 on the basis of price testing, that we weren't affecting response dramatically, but we're balancing response with the average order value as well. And so we did a lot of testing there. We did a lot of testing I remember doing testing in scripts as well. I worked at one stage for a telco company selling B2B. And I remember we got a script from the product manager, and it was all about the new features. But once we started talking to the customers, what they were most fearful about wasn't really, it was more, they were more interested in making sure that their existing features could be maintained. So we needed to start with that conversation before moving into the new features. So a lot of testing the scripts, and that's where experimentation isn't just, shouldn't be focused on just specifically websites, but it's really across all different touch points. So, and I think sometimes we're very much focused online, but CRM, whether it's direct mail, whether it's paid marketing, testing should be across all as many touch points as you can get.
And that's a good case that you also mentioned, that how pricing was tested and you scaled up the pricing as well, but through testing instead of just making a direct call. So that's where it is truly important to continue and test further rather than just implementing the change directly. And like how you had shown or discussed the process about how you tested things and across the touch points, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think CRO is also often focused on optimization. But again, one of the features Tom would always talk about is let's mean we've got the control and we've got that guaranteed baseline, so we're not going to, take an enormous risk. And, what I said about, redesigning that brochure, that it is, we see that all the time with people redesigning websites, redesigning landing pages. There's some great examples that came up through the CRO community recently. Like I remember one case study from Whirlpool in which they had an iconic blender, and the product manager wanted to introduce a 90-day money-back guarantee. And they wanted to see if that would improve conversion rate. So I know when I've asked this of some of my colleagues, I said, "Do you think it's going to increase conversion rate? Do you think a guarantee is going to increase conversion rate?" Almost everyone, almost 90% of people say yes, it's going to improve conversion rate. What's amazing? They did that test. The control had no guarantee. The variation had a 90-day money back guarantee, and the result was a double-digit decline in sales conversion. Yeah. So very interesting case study. Again, that's an example of placing guardrails in before you make dramatic changes to your website, to your products, to your campaigns. Having those guardrails in there. So it's a combination of both. Certainly trying to improve conversion rate, but also you've got a great chance to validate your decisions as well.
It's about, just imagine that you would not have like validated the hypothesis of like just bringing, and you would have just brought that 90 days money back on entire website, and how would the change have been perceived, or how much dip would people have seen into the revenue or the product sale, I would say.
Absolutely. I mean, there's another one recently through an Australian agency, Drum Digital. They spoke about this at a forum. They were working with a cruise company in which the cruise company had received advice on the booking funnel. The control booking funnel was a long, continuous page. The consultants advised, let's break that into multiple steps. Agency said, let's test that. So, long form versus multiple step booking funnel. What do you know? The one that was advised by consultants, the variation that they want introduced, apparently would have reduced sales by 18%. So once again, you've got, consultants coming in, and often, again, the role of consultants, I think this is why CRO is often better than that, because consultants may come and they may give that advice and then they're gone. They're not actually there to test. in a lot of cases. So this is where, you need to bring that lens in. Let's test whatever they're thinking, because sure, there's a lot of tests where I've seen complex booking funnels broken up into multiple steps and it's worked. Again, you need to test it, because just because you've seen it somewhere as best practice or as a win somewhere doesn't mean it's going to apply to your specific, your specific business or website. So absolutely, guardrails are really important for testing. Yeah.
And also, we need to understand which kind of business. Just replicating an idea from another reference might not bring in the same results, like the very live example that you just discussed.
Absolutely. Yeah. So in industry context specific, I think context is really important. So that guarantee, I've seen so many tests where they've introduced a guarantee and it's worked well. But let's look at the context. So one of the hypotheses was that that blender is an iconic blender. The design has stayed the same for almost 50 years. And suddenly it's never had a guarantee, and you introduce a guarantee. And you're going to start to think, what's changed with this product? You're starting to introduce doubt. There was never a guarantee before. Why is it? Have they changed production? Have they moved production offshore to some place where perhaps the quality isn't that great? So context specific. Whereas perhaps if it's a new company, it's a new product that's launching. I'm certain if you introduce a guarantee there, you're going to improve response. So again, context is really important. Yeah.
And I think it would have then generated questions in mind from the example that you're given. Like, there's no change in that blender, then why such guarantee? Like, what was it that we were using earlier? People even
That's
might think that why it didn't work. So yes, it makes sense totally that whenever we're introducing a concept, we need to understand our audience who had been using it, and even the product that we are serving.
yeah, absolutely.
That's all right. So, what do you think the role of user research plays into the CRO program?
Sure. User research, I think, is an important role, not just for conversion rate optimization. It's really important for every area of marketing, whether you're a product manager or your conversion rate optimization team as well. Often, we've heard about quantitative data analytics, but, that'll identify, where the problem is on site. It might give you a place where to start, but it's not really getting you to understanding of, what's the nature of the problem? Why is a customer experience a particular problem at this particular, stage of the customer journey? It doesn't help you understand the motivation of customers. It doesn't help you, you're going blind if you're going out without this user research. User research is also great, not just in identifying areas of friction, but also really identifying, potentially outlier markets. So, as an example, I worked with a celebrity fitness app a few years ago, you know, and their particular site led with the proposition of losing weight. Okay, so our target audience was, let's try to find people. We made it a broader audience selection. We didn't just say, let's find people that want to lose weight through a fitness app. We just said, let's try to find fitness people that want to that want to join an online fitness program. So it was a rather broad set. And then we found that 30% of the people that we interviewed didn't relate to this particular fitness app, didn't relate to the website, didn't relate to the messaging because they didn't want to lose weight. Right? They didn't identify with being fat, so they didn't want to lose weight. And I said, "What are your goals?" And I said, "Look, I want to get fit. I want to get stronger. I want to learn how to eat well. I want to learn how to use meditation. I want a more holistic view. I want to learn, different styles of fitness. I want a variety of fitness, but my motivation isn't losing weight." And so, okay, well, that's interesting. But our whole business was focused on that messaging of losing weight. So here's potentially 30% of the market that aren't interested. So how did we use that information? So what we did was that on the landing page, we decided to present different outcomes. So it was a fitness, an 8-week challenge. And it said, in 8 weeks, I will, and it had 4 different options there. I will lose weight. And if you clicked on that tab, it spoke about, that proposition of losing weight. There was another one, in 8 weeks, I will learn how to be a better version of myself. and that's focused on fitness. It also focused on meditation, more of a holistic health program. In 8 weeks, I will learn to eat better. I will learn to be fitter, faster, stronger. But there were multiple outcomes that were outside of the very constrained view of just losing weight. So, and that ended up getting an 8% uplift on sales conversion from an audience that probably we would have never have targeted had we not known about these user insights and understanding what are their motivations for working out. Not everyone's motivation is to lose weight. Like me, I'm very skinny. I can't lose weight. I got to get bigger. I got to get fitter, stronger. Want to get stronger and fitter. It's not losing weight. I know that program is got a lot of great fitness programs, classes for me. I'd never have looked at them because that's not the objective that I wanted to do. That's not my motivation. So it really gets into, understanding customers' motivation. Dig a little bit deeper, find out whether that motivation is intrinsic to that person. Sometimes it's driven by extrinsic motivation as well. So understanding what drives that person. So really get some fascinating insights there. And I think once you've got that user research, if you can combine that user research with other research methods, you can get some really powerful strategies there. So, um, for example, let's look at that fitness app again. So I remember on their join page, if you go to the join page, it says, their monthly program and their annual program. And I remember looking at that and going, seems pretty straightforward. I don't think there is an issue with this join page. $50 a month or join annually, you'll save, 40%. Seems pretty straightforward. Once again, the great thing about this is that with CRO, you've got to go into research and optimization with a very open mind. Take away your prejudices, any of your intuitions, your research, go into it. So we thought, let's do some user research on this join page. The research that we had came back was pretty dismissive of this particular join page. Some of the research was something like, this join page looks like I'm joining a gym that you just want to get my money and you don't really care about what I'm trying to achieve here. You know, I don't know what I'm going to get. And another part was, I didn't expect to be asked my credit card details here. I'm like, and I'm thinking, what did you expect? You're going to pay something, but you didn't expect to be asked that customer research, to be asked for your credit card details, for your payment details. So I'm like, what am I missing here? So then, we decided to look at the competitor landscape. So that's where we've got an insight from user research. A few people had said they didn't expect to be asked for their credit card details. They had expected to go through some sort of a journey where they're asked about their fitness level, what they want to achieve. And certainly, once we heard that insight, looking at the competitor landscape, that's exactly what the category norm was. It wasn't just asking for your money up front. It was trying to assess what you wanted to achieve, what's your fitness level, what are your goals, do you have any issues that we should be conscious of? But it was really a journey that spoke about personalization, and that's really what they're looking for. So that's a great insight when you've got user research and you also combine it with some other insights from other research avenues, competitor insights or tests that you've done before. You get a very strong, compelling strategy there. So, we, created a new strategy that's all about a customer journey, spoke about personalization. And I remember the first join page, the original one was rated at about 4 out of 10. We designed a new one and we did some user research on that to show them the new version. And the feedback was something like 9 out of 10. And it was like, I really like this journey. It feels like you understand what I'm trying to achieve. And it still feels like you understand where I'm coming from. You understand, I don't know where to begin in this. And I'm really feeling like I'm being guided and steered towards a program that's suited to my personal preferences. So yeah, I absolutely love user research.
And I think that adds a great makeover to the page, the one that's backed by user research. The example that you share is really interesting, that how you change and you actually then spoke about what user would be benefited rather than what is the benefit that a company is getting from by joining us.
Yeah, and absolutely. We've certainly got to be more user focused. It's really fun. Often we get product managers and they're talking very much in terms of features, feature based. It's kind of this, that, that. And often it's we've real, and this is, sort of fundamentals of copywriting. You focus more on the benefits. What does that particular feature enable you? How does it make life easier for you? Or how does it save you money? Or how does it improve XYZ? Bring it back to the actual user and how they're physically going to, oh, not physically, but how they're actually going to engage with that product, and how can it actually, improve their situation in some way. Bring it back to actually the users. Yeah.
Instead of it's like marketing focus, it should be more of like customer centric, any strategy that we work with, because that's where, like, you have given experience and examples that's how it changed as well, right? The join us page. So
Yeah, and I think that's part of a broader approach with UX playing such a great focus as well. We are looking for, whether it's, they call it the voice of the customer, or user centric design. Absolutely. So there's that big crossover between, again, UX and CRO. These principles across the board, but again, I think where UX stops and CRO continues is that let's put it into market. It's sometimes not enough to just redesign, go back to that customer, get feedback on that updated design, until you put it out there into market where, you're actually dealing with people who actually, whether they're going to give their money, that's the actual final test. Absolutely. Yeah.
and how do you think that we should approach a loss test and a winning test and decide the next course of action? Like, I'm sure you would have had enough of loss versus winning test combination.
Yeah, absolutely. So okay, both sides are certainly interesting. We'll go through systematically looking at results. So for both versions, whether it's winning or losing, just that systematic approach is that, let's start by looking at the metrics. Okay, make sure we're interpreting this test right. So we've certainly got the primary metric, but let's make also sure that some of you secondary metrics, what are that is that telling us about it? So I had an interesting test recently where it was on a join page, trying to get them to progress through different stages. And the primary metric was getting them to move from stage one of the join page to stage two of the join page. We succeeded there, had a big improvement there. But interestingly enough, on the back end, on actual customer signups, that was reduced significantly. So, let's make sure we're interpreting that test correctly. Okay. But let's go through that dimensional reporting as well. Let's look at the impact or the results of device. Okay. How did it perform on mobile versus desktop? How did it perform against new visitors versus returning visitors? Was it a win across the board? Was it a loss across the board? Or do we have some nuances there? you know so that's where often we'll find, hey, we've had a loss on this particular strategy. It won on desktop but it lost on mobile. you know so that's exactly what I had before as well. So we had a join page test where on desktop the new version looked far simpler, but on mobile, it looked like we had made the process far more complicated. So, we've got that nuances there. So then it leads into, well, what's our results? What's our learning? What's our analysis there? What's the next steps? And this next step, okay, let's focus on optimizing the mobile version of that. But we're also trying to dig into something deeper. What I also like to do is find patterns of customer behavior. You know, whenever we're doing testing, we've got all the results in another directory where we start to compare and tag different elements that have won or lost or different themes. I'm often looking for thematic elements that win or lose. There was a very interesting one that we did with a quick service restaurant where they wanted to introduce personalization. And by all accounts, most of the time you'll see an improvement in personalization. Interestingly enough, with this particular business, every time we try to introduce personalization, it decreased response rate. Whether we did it on the website, whether we did it in an email campaign, we always saw a decline in response rate. And so that was really interesting. We had two patterns there. We even back tested. And it was a continual pattern that obviously these customers, they don't they want to explore the product range as opposed to being prescribed that this is what you had before. That didn't work for them. So let's remove personalization. We've got a pattern of behavior there. So again, it's really interesting that you can't just take one learning and drop it on another website or another business at all. It always needs to be very custom specific. So the insights, the learnings, again, they're always different, and there's always something new that we're learning. But we'll go through that process, dimensional reporting, and then work about what are we learning about this, and it gives you a chance to better understand your customers, better understand your assumptions, start to refine your assumptions, start to refine your hypothesis into what works and what doesn't work. So, yeah, really fascinated by winning and losing tests there. Yeah.
And I think you mentioned the importance of segmentation. So slicing and dicing is very much important. That becomes the next step. Like segment the data, understand the audience that it worked for, and then take the results forward. Like launch for the one that it worked better, like the mobile version or the desktop version. So yes, it's an insightful thing that also allows us to understand the importance of segmenting the audience, understanding the parts of audience or the
Yeah.
buckets of audience that works well.
Absolutely, yeah. Whether it's online segmentation coming from different channels, whether it's in CRM. So again, I do want to talk about experimentation as a broader perspective, not just online, but certainly CRM as well. Again, whatever applications you provide a CRM or online or vice versa can be applied across both channels. So I certainly remember there was an email journey for P&O Cruises that we worked on, which was an email journey from the time they made the booking to getting on board the ship. So it was a 6 month or so email journey, had about 20 emails in it. And we decided to segment based on three broad areas: families, people 25 to 45, and then seniors. Completely different segments. It was an interesting product because the market was so broad, it wasn't specific. Um, and we did user research there. Oh, get back to user research. Okay, what are these different segments want from their holiday? What do they want to find out about? What's the first thing they want to know about their cruise holiday? So when we speak to customers that are 25 to 45, what do you think they want to know about? What do you think? You're probably in that bracket, I'm sure, 25 to 45. So 55, yeah. What would you like to know when you get on a cruise ship? What do you want to know?
The entertaining part of it, like parts of entertainment.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you've clearly qualified that you are in that bracket because all the 25 to 45s wanted to know was what are the parties on board the ship? When's the When's the first party happening? What do I want to wear? What's the dates of the parties? They just want to know about the parties. So, whereas a family segment, completely different. What do you think the family wants to know?
What their kids would get, like how would they entertain or keep their kids busy, and how would simultaneously even they enjoy, because a family
Exactly.
is a combination of both, like adult plus kids. So keeping kids busy will allow them to remain happy and enjoy further.
Yeah, they wanted to know how to get rid of their kids. They wanted to know what daycare facilities are available, what babysitting facilities are available. Yeah, they want to know how to get rid of their kids. So, two very different ones. And, I remember with that campaign, I didn't improve the open rate. The open rate was already high at about 50 to 70% open rate, but the click rate was really low until we started doing that segment, that personalization by segment. And I think we, lifted it from 5% to about 25%. And it was sort of one of the highest rated email journeys through one of the platforms that had recorded it. But taking that insight, certainly applying to CRM. But again, if you've got that visitor information, you can apply it to when those customers log into their portal and serve that information. Here's a family. Let's serve that information about based on an age demographic, for example. Yeah. Hmm.
Yes, I think that's also an interesting thing. Again, we draw it back that understanding audience is very important. So, like we spoke about personalization. So, personalization is also a great way of enhancing digital experience. So, do you think experimentation and personalization should work hand in hand for the growth, or like how do you do when you know that it's one versus another?
Personalization can take up a lot of resources to do this, and let's make sure it's actually worth putting in all that substantial effort to do it. As mentioned, we've seen some cases where with that quick service restaurant, personalization didn't work. We don't need to go to all that effort necessarily to do it. In other cases, I've seen companies where they get a product and it's the next product is very specific to that product. It certainly works better. So absolutely, they go hand in hand. It's a great opportunity to test different messaging, whether it's different product upsells or different messaging. It certainly should be tested as well. For sure. Yeah.
And what is the client maturity regarding experimentation in Australia? So, does it influence how experiments are run for clients' websites?
Wow, I mean, it's been around, I think, for about 10, 12 years in Australia. And it's really interesting when we start talking to, marketers. This is their very first exposure to A/B testing. It's not something that seems to be taught as they're coming through the ranks. And a lot of businesses are still never, embarking on it for the very first time. So we're seeing a slow adoption. I'm surprised after such a long period of time, it's not more widely used, but certainly, we're seeing more and more clients come aboard across a range of different industries. It's also great to see both small industries or small businesses businesses of different sizes getting on board with it, as well as, the cost of platforms and tools such as VWO has made it far more accessible for any business to take it on board. Yeah. But I think sometimes when I've gone into worked with clients where they've had CRO programs, they understand the importance of testing, but it feels like they're not sure exactly where to start. So often we've gone in, we've seen really low conversion rates. And often it's because they probably haven't followed that process. And that process, and something you've got to really believe in that process, is let's go through that entire research and planning phase, whether it starts with data analytics, you've got user research, research from anywhere you can get it, right? Whether it's desktop research, whether it's research from SEO, make sure you're trying to get as much research and identifying those customer issues as much. I think if you follow that process, you're going to get a much better win rate as well. So then we've gone in and, we've haven't had win rates. And so the mood has been a little bit defensive about it. But those ones are certainly open, I think are going to reap the benefits of, particularly in a market where a lot of people aren't doing it. So it's slowly adopting, but there's certainly a long way to go. Yeah.
All right. And it also seems that the first step of the process would be research. So wherever you start from, be it from the beginning or from the intermediate or from whichever stage, the first process starts from the research.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, whether it's, we've spoken about obviously user research. However, a lot of companies don't have user research. They don't have the budget to do user research. And I think they're often under the misconception that user research takes a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of people to do that. And the fact of the matter is, it actually isn't. One of the UX agencies, the Norman Nielsen agency, have identified that really, if you interview about 8 people, you're going to identify about 90% of the usability issues on your website. So that's really all it takes. 9 people to identify 8 people to identify 90% of the usability issues. And often when we've gone into user research, we might ideally be going for a panel of say 10 or 15 recruitment people on there, but often by about 6 to 8, we start to see the same patterns, the same issues arise, the same concerns, the same viewpoints being presented. So user research doesn't have to be this massive project that you're thinking of. You're going to get very insights. So I definitely recommend putting that investment into user research. But research can come in all different channels. So if you don't have it, so certainly work with clients that don't have it. Work with financial services, and we've had some incredible wins there because we looked at SEO research. So with SEO tools, whether it's Ahrefs or SEMrush, you've got keyword phrases, you've got keyword questions. And these are what people are asking. You can go to Google and often have those commonly answered questions there. You can even go to YouTube and see some of the YouTube videos people are being made to answer questions that people can't find on that website. So real interesting to get that source there. So that's a great way to look at user research. And we had some great wins there. So we did a test on home loans, okay, on refinancing. So in Australia last year, I think we had about 9 consecutive interest rate changes. And so there's a lot of competition for home loans, a lot of competition about refinancing, people switching loans, trying to get a better interest rate. And the landscape got very competitive. Banks were offering people with loans $5,000 cash back to switch loans. Pretty good incentive, you know. And so after the marketing was like, switch to us and you get a $5,000 cash back. And we worked with a client and they had that offer, was doing pretty well. But how do we improve it? So I started looking at SEO research and found some really interesting insights. And I went back to the client and go, hey, what do you think the most common question is people are asking about refinancing? What do you think? Do you have any thoughts yourself? Switching your home loan from one bank to another, what do you think the most common question is?
Better interest rate and like more incentive.
Yeah, so that was the answer I'd pretty much get from almost everybody. Yeah, what's the interest rate? That was the most common question. Um, However, when we're looking at SEO research, the most common question was, what is refinancing?
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So, perhaps it's people taking loans for the first time. Refinancing, as familiar as it is to us, is jargon to a lot of people. They may sort of know what it is. Yeah. So, what is refinancing? What are the advantages of refinancing? So, here's where we start to think about testing at thematic levels. Okay. So, by that I mean, if you're taking a message that is, here's a $5,000 cashback, you're taking a marketing angle. Okay, so here's $5,000 cash back. It's as easy as one, two, three. So what I propose is like, let's test a marketing page, which is your control version, versus an educational page, which talks about what is refinancing, what are the advantages. Here's the interest rate. By the way, we've got a $5,000 cashback offer. We did that test, and that an improvement of over 30% on the conversion rate on home loans, which is it's a multi-million-dollar test. Yeah. So, that's where we start to talk about research from tests and having multiple tests, having that test database, and you can start to draw these patterns, these themes. And I think that's probably an interesting view that we take forward for very complex services like financial services. What actually is it before we start to get into the marketing and the offers? So, I can't remember what the question was, but I think I've got it straight. Yes, yeah, yeah. So, research. So that's another angle. Is SEO is a great source for finding customer voice and the sorts of questions they're asking.
All right. And so we know that you are a comic book writer, which is interesting. So when did you decide to do that?
Yeah, we actually do a lot of testing in our comics. So in the world of publishing, you can mass produce. You'd have to print 10,000 copies or something like that, or you can produce in small quantities at a higher cost, but it gives you the opportunity to keep changing the product. So we're constantly testing which cover is going to work the best. And, often we'll do that, whether it's through social media, through our fans, or through our networks, to show two different versions of the cover and get them to tell us what actually works best. And what's interesting is that we're looking from it from perhaps, my artists are often looking at it from an artistic point of view versus a commercial point of view, and often the ones that we think are going to win are not the ones that win. Yeah. The ones that we wanted to run with are often not the covers that the audience want. I'll give you an interesting example where we had to test a cover that had several images on the cover versus one single image. And we thought the image, which had several images on the cover, was far more interesting. Lots of action. There was more, the detail in the art was fantastic. The other one was just the characters there. The one where the characters won. Simple as that. It presented a much more simpler concept to understand than multiple images there. We had one concept of a character. The book was called Sydney Zombie Apocalypse. It's a character called Bazza the Bogan Barbarian. If you're Australian, you'll probably get the humor of it. But in the original one, the head title was Sydney Zombie Apocalypse, and in small print was Baz of the Bogan Barbarian. We went to Sydney with it, and it sold incredibly well. When we went to Brisbane with it, out of state, it didn't sell well at all. And I was like, oh no, did I just make a book that's going to sell well in my city? And so I started asking people, why don't you want to buy it? He goes, it's Sydney. What do I care about Sydney? Can you make something for Brisbane? And I'm like, no, I can't make something for Brisbane. But I did notice that whenever we spoke about Baz of the Bogan Barbarian, people started laughing. And it's sort of a very iconic Australian term. That's why they started laughing. So what we decided to do was rebrand the book, give it equal weight with the head title, Baz of the Bogan Barbarian and Sydney Zombie Apocalypse. We went back to Brisbane, and then now suddenly we have a book that works well in Brisbane. Yeah. So that's become a formula going forward for all of our books. But yeah, we're constantly testing. I'm constantly doing user research because we're selling face to face, and I'm listening to when I'm doing my sales pitch. What are the phrases that make them laugh? What are the ones that they didn't catch? And then we're constantly going back, refining the text on the book, the back summary, refining our pitches. We're constantly using research to refine our marketing approach to them. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. We're bringing those skills into it. Yeah.
You have just tied those skills into the offline presence as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, no, we do lots. I mean, the next test is going to be, do we use just images versus actual photographic images of the book? So usually it's just the book cover, but you're not seeing that dimensional view of the book. So, that's something we're going to start testing on the website, and we'll probably do it through VWO. Actually, yeah.
That's great.
Mm.
So tell us, what are some common mistakes that brands shouldn't make if they want to benefit from CRO, and what's your piece of advice for them?
I think you've got to go into CRO with a very open mind. Sometimes it's a very humbling experience, that perhaps the strategy you put forward wasn't the one that works. Often you get best practice, you get some new design whiz bang feature, that's great. And you think you've done it all right, but in actual fact, you haven't done it right at all. So just go in there with an open mind. And it certainly felt when I was on client side, I was like, wow, how much did I learn by doing all this? Often when I work with designers, they're like, wow, Sorab, I use these new features. I use this, what I think is the best thing. And it didn't work. And it's really transformed how they approach, how they design a landing page now, and I remember a very simple test that we did. We had some images that had ghost CTAs. I'm like, why did you use a ghost CTA here? And he goes, well, I didn't want it to interfere with the product image. And I go, okay, but people can't see that CTA. Well, they probably can, but let's test making a solid CTA. We made a solid CTA, very simple, just add color. We had a 70% uplift on people clicking on that particular modal. Yeah, so you really got in there going with an open mind. Of that. The other thing I'd say is, if you're starting a CRO program, you're going to actually don't be discouraged by the losses that you're going to get as well. You'll go through a lot of losses, and if you don't have that user research or those insights, I certainly went through one client where we had a string of losses, and then suddenly we had one that just hit it out of the park. So keep testing, keep learning, keep refining, and don't give up. So I remember we had a join page that was really interesting. It was a join page, and it had it was an interesting join. Usually join page, you don't have marketing proof points on there. So this was a join page that had the same marketing proof points as the landing page. And I thought that's really unusual, So they wanted to test. Let's remove these proof points. We wanted to test. Let's remove these proof points, because the click on this proof point is going to take them back to the website and out of the join process. We tested removing those marketing proof points, and a decreased response. We tested, okay, let's keep the proof points there, but let's remove the links so they can't necessarily click back and take them out of the join process. Remove the links. it decreased response rate as well. So you're certainly getting a string of amazing losses. But again, what are we learning from that? We're learning that customers may not have enough information with the landing page. They want further reassurances. They want perhaps still need that more information. They need to see those proof points yet again. Again, it's a high involvement product, so let's keep that on there. And so we're constantly refining. Didn't win, didn't And then we looked at dimensional reporting. Where was the problem? It was on mobile. The join section was further down the page. We just needed to move it up the page, make some adjustments there, and then suddenly we had a 10% increase in conversion rate. So again, don't be discouraged by these ones, but you've just got to keep testing different hypotheses. Yeah.
I think the appetite to learn, test, and fail should be wide. Like, it's natural that if we test something, there would be an outcome of like failure as well. So we shouldn't be disappointed. It should actually motivate us to try something new rather than stopping us from that point.
Yeah, we spoke about certainly, looking at the results and don't be discouraged by losing tests, but really analyze the detail. So I remember there was one that really stumped me for a long time. And it was on an upsell. It was an upsell test. So within the checkout, often you see multiple upsells. So the control version, they just had one upsell product in there. And we decided to introduce multiple product upsells. So it went from, just showing one product as an upsell to 3 products as an upsell. The upsell percentage increased. It increased dramatically, but the average order value went down. So this was really confusing. We'd increased the number of average products that they bought, but the average order value actually went down. So what have we done there? What did we do there? Yeah. And what we found is that you've got to look at it by each particular element. So you've got to break it down. In this particular element, there were 2 considerations to think of. In terms of the format that we tested, the format was successful because we increased the average order value. So the format works. The upsell container is the winner. However, the average order value went down. So let's look at the products that we put into that container. We started looking at the products we put in the container, and we chose the products that were the cheapest upsell products to offer. And that suddenly, drove down the average order value. So then we started, okay, well, let's test that new container, but let's test higher product upsells. And then suddenly we've got the same average number of units, but we've also got that higher average order value. So yeah, so again, don't be discouraged by losses. Just keep digging into the data. And also, I think the other thing I should have mentioned about research is that, start looking at behavioral biases, and we start looking at that. And what we just mentioned there is something called the order effect. So the order effect is where the way in which you present products, particularly in price, can have an impact on order value. So if you present products from low price to high price, you're going to get an average or lower order value. Yeah. If you present products from high price to low price, you're going to get usually a higher average order value. So that's where you really start to try to dig in and try to understand what brought that down, break it down into specific elements, and you'll usually find some gold in there somewhere.
Yes. And it's also like we shouldn't stop. Like you have been iterating that person shouldn't stop it. It should actually be a good thought bank to proceed further rather than stopping there. So continuity is must in this program. Otherwise, at the end, you feel that you're nowhere, but we actually stopped somewhere where we were supposed to go further instead.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but again, there's always some learning from a test in some form or fashion. You're learning about that user behavior. This proposition that you did doesn't resonate with them for whatever reason. Is there another proposition that you can take? Is there another benefit that you should take? Yeah, absolutely. There's always something to learn.
So tell us, like with customers preferring an omni-channel journey, how can business effectively test and improve the interactions at every touch points that we see, like from website to call center to ad display?
Oh, ad display. Oh, interesting. Yeah. Well, so pretty much at every customer touch point, you should be able to test in this digital age. I mean, let's talk about ads. There's a lot of testing in ads that's being done already, but ideally, if you can do it, hand in hand across the whole channel and create that symmetrical experience, that's really good. So, for example, I remember there was one test that our agency did, and it was again on home loans. So they had two different images there. The first image was of a couple. Actually, it was the same house as well and the same couple. The first image they had was of a couple coming out of a house. They were coming out of the house. And the second image was a couple there standing outside the house looking at the house. So the one that they were coming out of the house kind of suggested that they owned it. So it was kind of like the dream of home ownership. The one of them looking at the house, standing outside, was more about wanting to become a home loan owner, perhaps yearning to have a house of their own at the place, that's theirs. Yeah. So that's a great, interesting. We've got two different themes there. Are we going to try to push the dream of owning your own home? Or are you going to go at that? Let's just take it a step at a time. Where is that customer at right now? They're actually yearning to get a home loan. So let's focus on that. Which one do you think won?
I think the second image that you said, that I'm still looking to get and achieve my dream
That's
into
right.
the.
Yeah, I think we had about, I think, an 8 to 10% increase on click throughs there. Absolutely, across the entire channel. So, if we can take that image again, what happens if we take that image, that visual approach, that learning, that theme, and apply that on the actual landing site homepage as well? Because again, you've got people coming through that you should have symmetrical messaging that matches the ad to the website. But again, what if you've got a different channel that comes through direct to the website? They're not going to see that particular angle. You've now learned what's the best sort of theme to present to them. So absolutely every touch point. Again, also we've talked about CRM marketing. Again, whether it's also scripts and telemarketing. There was a fascinating example from Ogilvy, who spoke about they worked with Adobe in trying to reduce customer churn. Customers had to call up, and usually when you call up to cancel a service, the common question is, "Oh, why do you want to cancel?" And that inevitably leads to you kind of reinforcing why you wanted to cancel. Oh, couldn't do this. It was this, and you start talking about all the complaints that you had. It's like you're reliving all of those issues that you had, you know. And then they have to say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Here's a little bit of a financial incentive," you know. Whereas Ogilvy took a completely different approach to retention. They said, "What are the features that you most used? What did you most like about the service?" And it completely reframed the discussion into thinking about how you used it and the features that you really enjoyed, rather than going through a venting sequence of everything that you hated about this product. Let's talk about what you actually loved, you know. And I think they said they had an 8% reduction in retention just from a script change. There's no tech change. There's no development cost change. Literally a script change of changing a few questions. And best of all, they didn't have to offer a financial incentive for those customers to stay on there as well. So you can really look at experimentation across the entire customer, across all customer touch points.
And I think serial approach, so like maintaining a common thing between each and every touch point is important to better connect the journey. Because if every other touch point speaks about something else, then definitely like customers might not connect well, and when they come back they might not be even able to relate, like versus the ad that they saw elsewhere. So
Yeah, absolutely. I remember there was one product, and in the user research, they said they would join this service to be part of a community. That was the theme. It was really community. That was their angle. But when you clicked on that ad and you landed on the website, the community was mentioned, but it was like really in the bottom tail end of the page where they were unlikely to see it. And so just making that matching, again, it improves that engagement rate.
I think yes, connectivity, even scroll depth matters because like if we put it at the bottom of the page, like not many of them would even reach there. So yeah.
Yeah, we should have touched on that in terms of user research. Is again that field of user research is so broad. Like, you've just spoke about. I mean, some of the features that VWO have in terms of click maps and scroll maps, and yeah, it's really insightful to see how often that amazing drop off after the first fold is it's very scary. It's always illuminating to go in with those reports, and you often see marketers so surprised that customers have dropped off, like, hey, after the second fold, it's like 30% of visitors are still on have left, or you haven't gone down to see that amazing content that they produced. Absolutely, again, another great source of user research. Yeah.
So tell us, like both SEO and CRO are improving user experiences on websites. So it's both about improving experience on website. So can they be leveraged together, or how can SEO complement CRO efforts to have like better results?
Definitely have to work hand in hand, because sometimes you're making changes to a landing page, and inadvertently you could impact SEO results. So, I think one of the common strategies says that, hey, let's start removing elements that aren't necessary to the conversion. You better check with your SEO team in case you've removed some key term, some key phrase, some key question that was actually absolutely critical. So, and conversely, we're getting insight from SEO. What are the common questions? What are the content gaps that can fuel a strategy? Often you're getting new content being made. Let's work on those pages, see how we can optimize that new content to connect back as well. So they've got to work hand in hand. And the SEO obviously brings in the traffic, and conversion rate is at that funnel end to convert it. But certainly they've got, they work hand in hand, like Batman and Robin. Really, it's a partnership. Absolutely. Mm.
And we also need to cater the traffic that we have already brought to the website. Otherwise, again, like we'll be losing and we'll be re-optimizing or maybe doubling up our SEO efforts.
Mhm.
Like if we eliminate the CRO piece, then it's like again focusing 2x on SEO because we have to actually nurture the traffic that comes to the website rather than just letting them go away.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, sometimes you see new content, and there's so much real content, but they may not necessarily have those user insights. So if you've got user insights that really talk about motivation, how does that change your perspective on that content? And so, absolutely, all the insights are going to combine together. Yeah.
So our business is too focused on using CRO to increase sales or meet KPIs rather than prioritizing the risk mitigation by avoiding like shipping the unvalidated experiences.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's by the very nature of that term, conversion rate optimization. It's really focused on improvements in conversion rates. Whereas I think now we're moving. I think the CROs community is really talking about conversion rate optimization, which is very quite constricted to engagement, whether it's reducing bounce rates, conversion rate, to the broader theme of experimentation, where it's about testing any hypothesis. And that really opens your whole landscape. So, whether it's testing a new business direction. So, I remember there was one particular company that had four products. Three of them had competitors. So, there was one particular product that didn't have a competitor in that scape in that field. So they said, in the control version of the website, all four products were given equal status. What they said is that we want to focus on this one particular product. We want to lead with this one because this is our unique selling proposition. And again, that term is something straight out of a textbook. Yeah, sure. Let's lead with the unique selling proposition. And again, it sort of goes back to, okay, but fortunately, the marketers, the product manager were smart enough to like, let's test that. So the control page had equal weight on all four products. The variation had a massive focus just on one product. The three other products were secondary. And again, it would have reduced conversion rate by about 18% had they gone with that particular strategy on just focusing on one particular product because it was unique in the market. Again, that's something straight out of a textbook. So yeah, I think focus on using it as risk mitigation as much as using it for improving your sales conversion rate.
Absolutely. So, we see business consultants and strategists proposing growth strategies to businesses these days. So, how does a CRO agency differentiate itself from them? Like you spoke in earlier example that there are consultants versus the agencies who actually does that.
Sure, absolutely. So, having worked at Deloitte, it's really interesting to see the political nature of agencies and how they work with clients. Sometimes it's really a particular marketing person who wants validation of their particular idea. And so they just want a stamp saying, hey, Deloitte approves this strategy. That's it. Um, it's not necessarily the best strategy. Or you've got consultants coming in focusing on the best practice, you know. And again, they'll present it and that's it. They're not there to test it. They're just there to give their stamp of approval. This is what we think is best practice. But until you test it, you don't really know if that strategy is actually going to work or not. So it's like, what's the word? All care, no responsibility is how I'd describe it. Yeah, they don't have responsibility over that final outcome in a lot of cases. And this is where I think we can take those insights and then really start testing them. It'd be great. Um, Sometimes you have a best practice, but more often than not, we find that these best practices, don't necessarily work for specific businesses.
So, sort of after spending several years in direct response marketing, what prompted you to shift towards testing and working with more brand focused companies?
So I went from print marketing into the world of digital marketing. So again, because I started with testing when I moved to brand marketing for a couple of years. I was surprised that most businesses don't do A/B testing. I thought that every business was doing A/B testing. That was the experience I had across about 4 or 5 different companies before moving into digital marketing. Then realizing, wow, companies actually don't test. They're just going on gut feels and assumptions. And I was actually like shocked at the level of sort of marketing immaturity and gut feels that were happening. And seeing how completely wrong they were. And I love seeing how completely wrong they were. You got to remember as a marketing person, we're not the average consumer, and I remember a case where the demographic of P&O Cruises is low income to middle income Australia. Okay. The demographic of some of the senior marketing managers was probably high income demographic. Okay. And value different things. So it was coming up to, I think, the 75th anniversary to P&O Cruises. Okay. And again, this sort of leads into talking about changing offers all the time as well. So they kept changing marketing creatives, marketing offers all the time with no concept behind it. It was just, let's just change it. And I was like, so it was the 75th anniversary. Leading up to that year, we were really far ahead of budget, incredibly far ahead of budget. And the offers that we had were like, leading up to that were free room upgrades and a free drinks package. Things that people really appreciate. Hey, I'm going to, get a better room if I, do this. I'm going to get free drinks. Who doesn't like free drinks? You know, and what they decided to do for their 75th anniversary was create a commemorative pack, which consisted of a commemorative bag, a commemorative lanyard, some commemorative socks, and a commemorative towel. So you'd cruise and you'd get this commemorative pack. Did they ask the customers, does the 75th anniversary mean anything to them? No, they didn't. No. Did they ask the customers, what would you prefer? Would you prefer a free room upgrade or would you prefer a commemorative pair of socks? No, they didn't. Meanwhile, the competition Royal Caribbean is going out with a free drinks package and they completely destroy us in that quarter. This was such a disastrous campaign. It set us so far back now that we were now behind budget when we were so far ahead of budget. So again, it's happening in those Really, you got to talk to you got to talk to your customers, understand your customers, and see what they want, as opposed to assuming that you know what they want. Yeah.
Yes, that's true. And I think your example also speaks so that it was a true and tried and I would say tested recipe that it didn't work. Like,
Yeah, iterative testing. Why you don't need to change landing pages offers every single time. That's really interesting. That when we work with a new client, we've got the landing page there, and I'll say, "Hey, when did you change this landing page?" And we're like, "Oh, just changed a couple of months ago." How often do you change landing pages? We do it with every offer, or we do it every quarter, and so I always like to look at the conversion rate of the last 3 to 4 landing pages. And what's interesting is often some of the early landing pages had better conversion rates. They never knew that and just decided to change the landing page. So it's often, I think we've got some sort of bias. And I think that's what marketers often talk. We've got to keep changing. No, actually you don't. Some of the best brands have kept their tagline for 50 years or more. I think, what is it? Is it L'Oreal that says you're worth it? Or there's some beauty brand that says you're worth it, and they've just had it for forever. I can't remember who it is.
I think it's L'Oreal
Is
most
it?
probably. It is most probably.
Yeah. But yeah, before you change it, again, rather than redesign the role, just go back to iterative testing. Yeah.
Yes. It's more of like what to do with your audience. Like messaging should be catered to the audience who is even using the product or trying the service.
It, it should be catered towards the audience. Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Often it's as simple as customers don't know how the product works.
Yes.
you know um, and I remember one really interesting test where that was the feedback was that I don't understand how this product works. And so in the user research session, we started showing them what was behind the paywall. Okay, and it could really show the features that they could do. And it's like, oh, now I get it. After seeing what was behind the paywall, they get, okay, it's really useful. It's good. Okay, so what we've got to do is take the content behind the paywall and put it into the ads, into the landing pages. So it ended up being a day using this particular product, and we had a great success there. And just basically showing how it works on a day-to-day basis. Yeah.
It's where you establish the trust and it encouraged them to use. Because knowing the underlying structure, I think it would have just increased the trust of that user.
Absolutely. Yeah. Um, Actually, trust is a really interesting in one too. I've just been looking at some case studies where testimonials don't work. So that's interesting. Again, we always probably hear some of these best practices that, hey, trust and social proof work. So I've just been looking at a whole series of case studies where what's the best way to use social proof. So it's really interesting. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mm.
Any thoughts or final message you'd want to share with the audience who's listening us, watching us?
Hopefully, if there are businesses listening that haven't done testing before, um, take it on board. And it's really easy to get into testing now. The tools, the research is all there. But tools, it's very accessible. It's very affordable to get into user research, into experimentation and CRO testing. And you can only win from it. You're not going to lose from it. There's no way you're going to lose. Either you're going to better understand your customers, or you're going to get a better conversion rate as well. I think to client side, user research is absolutely key. You've got a great opportunity here to also be really adventurous with marketing. Here's a great way to test some of your wildest ideas if you want, because if you've got a control there, you've always got that guaranteed baseline, but you've also got a chance to test some new ideas, and you've got that safeguard there as well. So I know I just love experimentation, and the data is pretty conclusive about this. You've seen experimentation used by the biggest companies in the world. I think there's some incredible stats by the companies, the Fortune 500 companies that use experimentation versus those that don't. And I think those that have used it have seen some like 30% increase on revenue versus those companies that don't do it. What's also great is that now we've got a level playing field where some of these incredible tools were inbuilt tools are only accessible by large companies. Now it's a field of experimentation where it's very easy to get into with a range of tools such as VWO that makes it very affordable and easy for anyone to start doing testing. The great thing about testing is really that you can't lose. You're going to get some incredible wins, and you're always, even with your losses, you're going to learn some customer insights and get to refine your assumption about customers. So I can only encourage everyone to start testing or to do more testing as well.
Great. All right, we'll now move to our rapid fire round and we would love to hear your spontaneous answers.
Okay, great.
So, if you were starting a career today in CRO, what is one thing you would do differently?
I'd probably start looking at behavioral economics, which is really the study of how customers make decisions. We know that a lot of the decisions that people make are often emotional decisions. They're not necessarily based on rational decisions. People are making multiple decisions throughout the whole day, and we use mental shortcuts to be able to make these decisions faster. And having an understanding of these biases can certainly help improve conversion rates. So, an example of that is, I think we touched on that, is the order effect. We spoke about how the way in which products are ordered on a page can impact the average order value. So, if you order products from high to low, you're going to get a higher average order value. And what was really fascinating is that we tested this on a quick service restaurant. It was really fascinating, in which the client said, hey, 80% of our sales come from 20% of our products. It's that classic, 20-80-80 rule. So we want you to create a bestseller section, and that's going to be the variation. What that did was that changed the price order from high price to low price to a random price order. So now we've got the control version that goes from high to low to the variation that's bestsellers, that's all over the place. Okay. And this was one the client wanted to run. And we said, what's the problem statement that you have here? What's the problem that you're actually trying to solve? Is there a customer problem? There actually isn't one. And sometimes it doesn't need to be one. You want to try to optimize or try to improve in a different way. Went to market, and what do you know? Conversion rate fell down, as did the average order value as well. And again, I think I touched on a client that we spoke about this client before, that anytime we try to personalize, anytime this sort of ties into that. This isn't personalization, but it's trying to steer customers into a particular product set. Any time we tried to guide customers there, it fell apart. So what's that? That's the order effect. And that's a behavioral bias, that is. And, we knew that coming into it, that might be the way that it goes. So again, getting an understanding of numerous behavioral biases are really fascinating. The fresh start effect is another great one, that timing is so absolutely critical. When do most people want to start their fitness program? Start every season, start every every new year. When do most people have affairs? it's on, it's on it's on the 9th. It's like when I'm about to turn 39, 29, 49 is when most people have affairs, is that it's a fresh start. Anyway, whoever is married, be careful of that particular age thing. So having an understanding of behavioral biases are really, really fascinating. Yeah.
So, tell us a newsletter that every CRO professional must follow.
Yeah, one that I follow, as a podcast that I follow, is the Nudge podcast with Phil Agnew. I think it comes out every week, so I'm constantly listening to that. I'm listening to probably anything from the Ogilvy Nudge Unit. Certainly love anything that a lot of the seminars that Rory Sutherland has as well. Again, it's all real about those behavioral nudges that we can bring about. Yeah.
And any books you recommend?
Yep, Alchemy by Rory Sutherland. Richard Shotton has several books on behavioral economics. The Illusion of Choice and The Choice Factory. What's another one? I think there's one by Nancy Harhat as well on behavioral economics as well. So that's probably where I would have started into getting much better understanding of behavioral economics and psychology. Yeah.
And tell us, what's your go-to travel destination in Australia?
Australia, wow. I live in Sydney, which is one of the best cities in the world, so we've got it pretty good here. But I do like the heat, so I like Cairns, which is very tropical. So Cairns in Queensland, yeah.
Great. And one thing that AI will replace in next 3 years.
I think it's those areas where it's single disciplinary, and it follows a very specific process, a uniform process, whether it's a systematic step by step job. Those are the ones that are going to be replaced. I've thought about whether CRO will be replaced, but I think we're coming from such disparate, using sources from such a variety of different areas and fields that hopefully it won't be. At the same time, I'm seeing a lot of tools that are coming up that have a CRO checklist. And again, that's kind of suggests that CRO is straight out of the box. That is a step-by-step best practice process. And I think seeing some of these is actually quite detrimental to the field, because that we know doing testing that you need a really customized approach. And you can see the different win rates of teams that use a very sort of out of the box, where'd you get this idea? I got this out of a CRO checklist, versus strategies that are really custom made to a specific client, specific context, to a specific segment. So, hopefully, people will have it's great to have those checklists there, but appreciate that, that's, that's really not CRO. You really need to go through that user research and understand what it is. They may say, hey, let's improve social proof. Funny enough, I had a test where we increased the level of social proof and authority bias. It didn't make any difference. That's not the issue. The customer didn't know how to use the product. So, no. I think it's those jobs just going back that have just a very systematic, regimented view, that'll be replaced. Yeah.
And if not a CRO specialist, what's the other profession you would have chosen?
I would have chosen to be a comic book publisher and writer, and just be a great storyteller. Just focus on producing great stories and entertainment. Yeah.
So one CRO metric that you wish people should stop obsessing over.
The sales conversion rate. Absolutely. Yeah. You've got to understand a journey through a website is exactly that. So often, we make changes through a homepage, but from the homepage to the actual checkout are something like 20 multiple different steps across to get there. And often you'll make a change at the homepage. Really, the objective of the homepage is just to get them through to a product listing page or product description page. It's as much as you can do there. But often we get those wins there, and people are looking at the sales conversion rate. We haven't had a win there. But again, you've got to think about progression metrics versus sales conversion. So often it's as much as a 10 to 1, that you've got to get an increase of progression by about 10% to get potentially even a 1 or 0.5% increase on the sales conversion rate. So focus on the journey, just moving customers from one stage of the journey to the next stage of the journey.
And tell us about like a dream or goal that you'd like to achieve in next 3 years.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to write a book on behavioral economics and behavioral biases. So that's actually it was on my New Year's resolution to do it this year. But I think, well, we've still got about 4 months to go. I'll start it this year, so it'll be a book on behavioral economics and behavioral biases, psychology. Yeah.
That will be an interesting blend of thoughts that would, I think, cover your CRO background and it would reflect the stories from there as well.
Yeah, hopefully so. Bring as much of my experience into it. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Saurabh, for an insightful and informative discussion on CRO.
Wonderful. Thanks very much for having me. Yeah.
Thank you. Until then, stay tuned, everybody. Happy optimizing.